In the arena of cryptozoology, few creatures have captured the imagination as much as the Loch Ness Monster. Sightings and stories of this magnificent beast go back decades and decades. But does it exist? Is it real or the product of fantasy? Time to deep dive into the facts. Also known as Nessie for short, the Loch Ness Monster is a cryptid in cryptozoology and Scottish folklore that is said to occupy Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands. It is often described as massive, long-necked, and with one or more humps projected from the water. Widespread interest and belief in the monster have changed significantly since it was brought to worldwide recognition in 1933. Evidence of its presence is anecdotal, with several disputed photos and sonar examinations. The scientific community views the Loch Ness Monster as a phenomenon without a biological basis. Sightings have been explained as hoaxes, wishful thinking, and the misidentification of ordinary things. Where did the legend begin? The first modern study of a sighting of an unusual creature in the loch may have been made in the 1870s, when a man known as D. Mackenzie alleged to have seen something wriggling and churning up the water. However, this account wasn't published until 1934, and research shows that many newspapers did publish articles about a creature in the loch well before 1934. The best-known article that first brought a great deal of awareness about a creature was published on May 2, 1933, in the Inverness Courier, and it told of a giant beast or whale-like fish. Water bailiff for Loch Ness and part-time journalist Alex Campbell discussed a sighting by Aldi Mackay of a monstrous creature with the body of a whale rolling in the loch's water, while she and her husband John were travelling on the A82 on April 15, 1933. The word monster was reportedly used for the first time in Campbell's article, although some reports claim that editor Evan Barron coined it. In 2017, the Courier published excerpts from the Campbell article, called Strange Spectacle in Loch Ness. The creature disported itself, rolling and plunging for fully a minute, its body resembling that of a whale, and the water cascading and churning like a simmering cauldron. Soon, however, it disappeared in a boiling mass of foam. Both onlookers confessed that there was something uncanny about the whole thing, for they realised that here was no ordinary denizen of the depths, because, apart from its enormous size, the beast, in taking the final plunge, sent out waves that were big enough to have been caused by a passing steamer. According to a 2013 report, Mackay said that she had shouted, "Stop, the beast!" when viewing the scene. In the late 1980s, a naturalist interviewed Mackay, and she admitted to remembering that there had been a verbal tradition of a beast in the loch well before she claimed to see it. Alex Campbell's 1933 article also said that Loch Ness has for generations been credited with being the home of a fearsome-looking monster. On August 4, 1933, the Courier printed a statement of another alleged sighting from a Londoner named George Spicer, who was the head of a tailor firm. Many weeks prior, while they were driving around the loch, he and his wife witnessed what they described as the nearest approach to a dragon or prehistoric animal that I have ever seen in my life. moving across the road towards the loch, with an animal in its jaws. Spicer describes the beast as having a long neck which moved up and down in the manner of a scenic railway. He said the body was fairly big with a high back, but if there were any feet, they must have been of the web kind, and as for a tail, I cannot say, as it moved so rapidly, and when we got to the spot, it had probably disappeared into the loch. Loch Ness mania was about to run wild. Letters started appearing in the Courier, often anonymously, alleging land or water sightings by the writer, their family or acquaintances, or remembered tales. The accounts reached the media, which reported a monster fish, sea serpent or dragon, and eventually settled on Loch Ness Monster. The earliest documented report of a monster in the proximity of Loch Ness appears in the 6th century book Life of St. Columba, by an abbot of Iona Abbey, statesman, canon jurist and saint, who was known as Adomnan. According to Adomnan, writing about a century after the events reported, Irish monk St. Columba stayed in the land of the Picts with his friends when he encountered residents burying a man by the river Ness. The locals explain that the man was swimming in the river when he was attacked by a water beast that hurt him and pulled him underwater. They had tried to save him in a boat, but he was already dead. Columba sent a follower, Luigi Moccamin, to swim across the river. The beast neared him, but Columba made the sign of the cross and said, "Go no further, do not touch the man. Go back at once." The beast froze as if it had been pulled back with ropes and retreated, and Columba's men and the Picts gave thanks for what they regarded as a miracle. 6th century believers in the Loch Ness Monster point to that tale as evidence for the monster's existence. Skeptics challenge the story's authenticity, noting that water beast stories were widespread in medieval hagiographies, and Adomnan's tale probably recycles a familiar theme connected to a local landmark. According to skeptics, Adomnan's account may be independent of the current Loch Ness Monster legend and became attached to it by believers attempting to support their claims. Author Ronald Binns considers that this is the most serious of several claimed early sightings of the monster, but all other alleged sightings before 1933 are questionable and don't prove a monster myth before that date. Scholar Christopher Kearney employs a particular historical and cultural interpretation of Adomnan to divide Adomnan's tale about St. Columba from the modern myth of the Loch Ness Monster, but found earlier and culturally significant use of Celtic water beast folklore along the way. He also discredits any substantial connection between kelpies or water horses and the modern, media-augmented creation of the Loch Ness Monster. showed that the object was small, about 2 to 3 feet in length. Since 1994, most acknowledge that the photo was an intricate hoax. It had been described as fake in a December 7, 1975 Sunday Telegraph article that fell into obscurity. Details of how the photo was taken were published in the 1999 book Nessie, the Surgeon's Photograph Exposed, which contains a reproduction of the 1975 Sunday Telegraph article. The creature was reportedly a toy submarine built by Christian Sperling, the son-in-law of Marmaduke Wetherell, his employer. The Daily Mail had publicly exposed Wetherell after he found Nessie footprints that turned out to be a fabrication. Little is known of the second photo. Researchers believe its quality to be too poor and its variations from the first photo too great to justify examinations, and is usually ignored by researchers. It shows a head similar to the first photo, with a more destructive wave pattern and possibly taken at a different time and location in the loch. Some consider it to be an earlier, clumsier attempt at fabrication. Others, including Roy Mackal and Maurice Burton, think it's a picture of a diving bird or otter that Wilson mistook for the monster. According to Morrison, when the plates were developed, Wilson was unconcerned with the second photo. He let Morrison keep the negative, and the picture was rediscovered years later. When asked about the second photo by the Ness Information Service newsletter, Sperling was vague, thought it might have been a piece of wood that they were trying out as a monster, but was not sure. On May 29, 1938, South African tourist G.E. Taylor filmed something in the loch for 3 minutes on a 16mm colour film. The film was acquired by popular science writer Maurice Burton, who didn't show it to other researchers. A single frame was printed in his 1961 book, The Elusive Monster. His examination reasoned it was a floating object, not an animal. On August 15, 1938, William Fraser, Chief Constable of Inverness-shire, penned a report that the monster existed beyond doubt, and displayed concern about a hunting party that had arrived with a custom-made harpoon gun, and was prepared to catch the monster dead or alive. He believed his power to protect the monster from the hunters was very doubtful. The National Archives of Scotland released the letter on April 27, 2010. In December 1954, sonar readings were taken by the fishing boat Rival III. Its crew recorded a large object maintaining movement with the vessel at a depth of 479 feet. It was detected for 2,600 feet before contact was lost. Prior sonar efforts were inconclusive or negative. Peter McNab at Urquhart Castle on July 29, 1955, took a picture that pictured 2 long black humps in the water. The image wasn't made public until it was printed in Constant White's 1957 book, More Than a Legend, The Story of the Loch Ness Monster. On October 23, 1958, it was published by the Weekly Scotsman. Author Ronald Binns wrote that the phenomenon which McNab photographed could easily be a wave effect resulting from 3 trawlers travelling closely together up the loch. Other researchers think the picture is a hoax. Roy Mackal asked to use the photograph in his 1976 book. He got the original negative from McNab, but found it differed from the picture that appeared in White's book. The tree at the bottom left in White's was missing from the negative. It is suspected that the photo was altered by re-photographing a photograph. aeronautical engineer Tim Dinsdale photographed a hump that left a wake crossing Loch Ness in 1960. Dinsdale, who reportedly had the sighting on his final day of the search, reported it as reddish with a blemish on its side. He said that when he positioned his camera, the thing began to move, and he shot 40 feet of film. According to the Joint Air Reconnaissance Intelligence Centre, also known as JARIC, the object was probably animate. Others were sceptical, saying that the hump can't be ruled out as a boat, and when the contrast is increased, a man in a boat can be seen. On May the 21st, 1977, Anthony Doc Shields was camping next to Urquhart Castle when he took some of the monster's clearest pictures until this day. Shields, a magician and psychic, alleged to have ordered the animal out of the water. He later characterised it as an elephant squid, declaring the long neck shown in the photograph as the squid's trunk, and that a white spot at the travelling neck is its eye. Due to the absence of ripples, many people named his evidence a hoax. On May the 26th, 2007, 55-year-old laboratory engineer Gordon Holmes videotaped what he said was this jet black thing, about 46 feet long, moving fairly fast in the water. Adrian Shine, a marine biologist at the Loch Ness 2000 Centre in Drumnadrochit, called the footage the best footage he had ever seen. BBC Scotland broadcast the video on May the 29th, 2007. STV News North Tonight aired the footage on May the 28th, 2007, and interviewed Holmes. Shine was also interviewed and proposed that the footage was an otter, seal, or waterbird. On August the 24th, 2011, Loch Ness boat captain Marcus Atkinson recorded a sonar image of a 4.9-foot mysterious object that appeared to follow his boat for 2 minutes at a depth of 75 feet. This ruled out the likelihood of it being a small fish or seal. In April 2012, an investigator from the National Oceanography Centre stated that the image is a bloom of algae and zooplankton. On August 3, 2012, skipper George Edwards insisted that a photo he took on November 2, 2011, shows Nessie. Edwards claims to have hunted for the monster for 26 years and reportedly spent 60 hours per week on the loch aboard his boat, Nessie Hunter IV, taking tourists for rides on the lake. According to Edwards, "In my opinion, it probably looks kind of like a manatee, but not a mammal. When people see 3 humps, they're probably just seeing 3 separate monsters." Other researchers have challenged the photograph's authenticity, and Loch Ness researcher Steve Feltham proposed that the object in the water is the fiberglass hump used in a National Geographic Channel documentary in which Edwards had participated. Researcher Dick Rayner has challenged Edwards' claim to find a deeper bottom of Loch Ness, which Rayner calls Edwards Deep. He found inconsistencies between Edwards' claims regarding the photograph's location and conditions and the actual site and weather conditions that day. According to Rayner, Edwards told him that he had faked a photo in 1986 that he claimed was genuine in the Nat Geo documentary. Although Edwards revealed in October 2013 that his 2011 image was a hoax, he insisted that the 1986 photograph was real. A survey of the research about other hoaxes, including photos, published by the Scientific American on July 10, 2013, shows many others since the 1930s. The most recent image, considered to be good, emerged in newspapers in August 2012. It was supposedly taken by George Edwards in November 2011, but was definitely a hoax, according to the Science Journal. On August the 27th, 2013, tourist David Elder presented a 5-minute video of a mysterious wave in the loch. According to Elder, the wave was produced by a 15-foot solid black object just under the water's surface. Elder, who's 50 years old from East Kilbride, South Lanarkshire, took a picture of a swan at the Fort Augustus Pier on the southwestern end of the loch when he caught the movement. According to Elder, the water was very still at the time, and there were no ripples coming off the wave and no other activity on the water. On April the 19th, 2014, it was reported that a satellite image on Apple Maps showed what seemed to be a large creature just below the surface of Loch Ness. At the lochs far north, the picture looked about 98 feet long. Potential explanations were the wake of a boat, with the ship itself lost in image stitching, or low contrast, seal-caused ripples, or floating wood. Google commemorated the 81st anniversary of The Surgeon's Photograph with a Google Doodle and added a new feature to Google Street View. Users can explore the loch above and below the water. Google spent a week at Loch Ness gathering imagery with a Street View Trekker camera, adding it to a boat to film above the surface, and collaborating with members of the Catlin Seaview Survey to photograph underwater. In addition to the evidence of the monster's existence, several expeditions have been launched to find Nessie. After reading Rupert Gould's book, The Loch Ness Monster and others, Edward Mountain funded a hunt. 20 men with binoculars and cameras placed themselves around the loch from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. for 5 weeks, beginning on July the 13th, 1934. Even though 21 photos were snapped, none of them were considered decisive. The Loch Ness Phenomena Investigation Bureau, also known as the LNPIB, was a United Kingdom-based organisation established in 1962 by Norman Collins, RSSR fitter, politician David James, Peter Scott and Constance White. Their mission was simple: to study Loch Ness to identify the creature known as the Loch Ness Monster, or determine the causes of reports of it. The organisation's name was shortened to the Loch Ness Investigation Bureau, or just the LNIB, and it dispersed in 1972. The LNIB had a yearly subscription charge, which covered administration. Its leading venture encouraged groups of self-funded volunteers to watch the loch from vantage points with film cameras fitted with telescopic lenses. From 1965 to 1972, it had a caravan camp and viewing platform at Achnahannet and sent observers to other places up and down the loch. According to the Bureau's 1969 annual report, it had 1,030 members, 588 of which were from the United Kingdom. Chair of the Department of Electronic and Electrical Engineering at the University of Birmingham, D. Gordon Tucker, offered his cooperation as a sonar developer and authority at Loch Ness in 1968. His gesture, part of a more significant effort led by the LNPIB from 1967 to 1968, involved collaboration between volunteers and experts in many fields. Tucker chose Loch Ness as the test site for a model sonar transducer, with a maximum range of 2,600 feet. The machine was fixed underwater at Temple Pier in Urquhart Bay and pointed at the opposite shore, drawing an acoustic net across the loch through which no moving thing could pass undetected. During the 2-week trial in August, multiple targets were identified. One was believed to be a shoal of fish, but others moved in a way not typical of shoals at speeds up to 10 knots. In 1972, a group of researchers from the Academy of Applied Science, led by Robert H. Rines, searched for the monster involving sonar examination of the loch depths for strange movement. Rines took precautions to avoid murky water with floating wood and peat. A submersible camera with a floodlight was deployed to take photographs below the surface. If Rines caught anything on the sonar, he turned the light on and took photographs. On August the 8th, Rines' Raytheon DE-725C sonar unit, operating at a 200 kHz frequency and anchored at a depth of 36 feet, identified a moving target, or targets, estimated by echo strength at 20 to 30 feet in length. Experts from Raytheon, Simrad, now Kongsberg Maritime, Hydroacoustics, Marty Klein of Mitt and Klein Associates, a side-scan sonar producer, and Ira Dyer of MIT's Department of Ocean Engineering were on hand to review the data. P. Skitsy of Raytheon proposed that the data indicated a 10-foot bulge projecting from one of the echoes. According to the author Roy Mackall, the form was a highly flexible, laterally flattened tail, or the mistaken results of two animals swimming concurrently. The floodlit camera caught a pair of underwater images. Both represented what looked to be a rhomboid flipper, although skeptics have rejected the pictures as representing the bottom of the loch, air bubbles, a rock, or a fish fin. The possible flipper was recorded in different positions, registering movement. The first flipper photo is better known than the second, and both were enhanced and modified from the original negatives. According to team member Charles Wyckoff, the pictures were corrected to superimpose the flipper. The original enhancement shows a considerably less distinct thing. No one is sure how the originals were changed. During a meeting with Tony Harmsworth and Adrian Shine at the Loch Ness Centre and Exhibition, Rines revealed that a magazine editor may have retouched the flipper photo. On the basis of the photographs, British naturalist Peter Scott stated in 1975 that the creature's scientific name would be Nessoteris rhomboteryx, which is Greek for Ness inhabitant with a diamond-shaped fin. Scott proposed that the name would enable the creature to be added to the British record of preserved wildlife. Scottish politician Nicholas Fairbairn called the title an anagram for Monster Hoax by Sir Peter S. However, Rines countered that when shifted, the letters could also spell, yes, both pics are monsters, are. Another sonar contact was made, this time with two objects estimated to be about 30 feet in length. The strobe camera filmed two large objects circled by a flurry of bubbles. Some described the objects as two plesiosaur-like creatures, proposing several large animals living in Loch Ness. This photograph has rarely been published. The second search was conducted by Rines in 1975. Despite their murky quality and lack of concurrent sonar readings, some of the pictures did seem to show unknown animals in various situations and lightings. One image appeared to show the head, neck and upper torso of a plesiosaur-like animal, but skeptics argue the thing is a log due to the lump on its chest area, the mass of debris in the full photo, and the object's log-like skin texture. Another image seemed to show a horned gargoyle head, like with that of some sightings of the monster. Nevertheless, skeptics point out that a tree stump was later filmed during Operation Deep Scan in 1987, which had a remarkable resemblance to the gargoyle head. In 2001, Rines Academy of Applied Science videotaped a V-shaped wake traversing still water on a calm day. The Academy also recorded an object on the loch floor, matching a carcass, and found marine clamshells and a fungus-like organism not typically found in freshwater lochs, a suggested connection to the sea and a potential entry for the beast. In 2008, Rines theorised that the creature might have become extinct, indicating the lack of significant sonar readings and a decline in eyewitness accounts. He began a final excursion, using sonar and an underwater camera to find a carcass. Rines thought that the animals might have failed to adapt to temperature fluctuations resulting from global warming. Operation Deep Scan was conducted in 1987. 24 boats, equipped with echo-sounding devices, were used across the loch's width and simultaneously sent acoustic waves. According to BBC News, the investigators made sonar contact with an unknown object of significant size and strength. The researchers returned, re-scanning the area. Analysis of the echo sounder photographs seemed to show debris at the bottom of the loch, although there was motion in 3 photos. Adrian Shine theorised, based on size, that they might be seals that had entered the loch. Sonar Authority Darrell Lawrence, the founder of Lawrence Electronics, donated many echo sounder units used in operation. Lawrence said that after examining a sonar return which showed a massive mobile object at a depth of 529 feet near Urquhart Bay, "There's something here that we don't understand, and there's something here that's larger than a fish, maybe some species that hasn't been detected before." In 2003, the BBC sponsored exploration of the loch, using 600 sonar beams and satellite tracking. The investigation had significant resolution to identify a small buoy. No animal of substantial size was found, and notwithstanding their reported expectations, the associated scientists admitted that this proved the Loch Ness Monster was a myth. Searching for the Loch Ness Monster aired on BBC One. A global team, made up of researchers from the universities of Otago, Copenhagen, Hull, and the Highlands and Islands, performed a DNA survey of the lake in June 2018, looking for unique species. The results were published in 2019, but there was no DNA of big fish like sharks, sturgeons, and catfish. There wasn't any otter or seal DNA either. The leader of the study, Professor Neil Gemmell of the University of Otago, said he couldn't rule out the likelihood of eels of extreme size, though none were found, nor were any ever caught. The other probability is that a large amount of eel DNA simply comes from many small eels. No proof of any reptilian sequences were found, he added, so I think we can be fairly sure that there is probably not a giant scaly reptile swimming around in Loch Ness. If there is not a monster out there, what could it be? Many explanations have been suggested to account for sightings of the creature. According to Ronald Binns, a former member of the Loch Ness Phenomena Investigation Bureau, there is seemingly no single explanation of the monster. Binns wrote 2 sceptical books, 1983's The Loch Ness Mystery Solved and 2017's The Loch Ness Mystery Reloaded. In these, he contests that a feature of human psychology is the ability of the eye to see what it wants and expects to see. The Loch Ness Monster may be the result of misidentifications of known animals or inanimate objects. Wakes in the water have been reported when the loch is calm, with no vessels nearby. Bartender David Munro said that he had witnessed a water wake caused by a creature zigzagging, diving and reappearing. There were reportedly 26 other observers of this wake at a nearby car park. Some sightings describe a V-shaped wake similar to a boat's, and others report something not corresponding to a boat's shape. A giant eel was an early idea of what the monster was. Eels are found in Loch Ness, and an unusually large one could explain many sightings. Dinsdale rejected the hypothesis because eels move side to side like snakes. From 2018 to 2019, scientists from New Zealand began a massive project to document every animal in Loch Ness based on DNA samples. Their records confirmed that European eels are still found in the loch. No DNA samples were found for large animals such as catfish, Greenland sharks, or plesiosaurs. Many experts now consider that enormous eels account for multiple, if not most, of the sightings. In a 1979 article, California biologist Dennis Power and geographer Donald Johnson alleged that the surgeon's photograph was the top of the head, extended trunk and flared nostrils of a swimming elephant, recorded abroad and then claimed to be from Loch Ness. In 2006, paleontologist and artist Neil Clark proposed that travelling circuses might have let elephants bathe in the loch. The trunk could be the distinguished head and neck, with the head and back the perceived humps. Zoologist, angler and television presenter Jeremy Wade studied the creature in 2013 as part of the series River Monsters, and reasoned that it is a Greenland shark. The Greenland shark, which can reach up to 20 feet in length, inhabits the North Atlantic Ocean around Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Norway, and possibly Scotland. It is dark in colour, with a small dorsal fin. According to biologist Bruce Wright, the Greenland shark could survive in fresh water, likely using rivers and lakes to find food. Loch Ness has an excess of salmon and other fish. In July 2015, 3 news outlets reported that after a vigil at the loch that was recognised by the Guinness Book of Records, Steve Feltham hypothesised that the monster is an unusually large specimen of Wells catfish, which may have been released during the late 19th century. It is challenging to estimate an object's size in water through a telescope or binoculars with no outside reference. Loch Ness has resident otters, and photos of them and deer swimming in the loch, which was cited by author Ronald Binns, may have been misinterpreted. According to Binns, birds may be mistaken for a head and neck sighting. In 1933, the Daily Mirror published a picture with the caption, "This queerly shaped tree trunk washed ashore at Foy's on Loch Ness may be responsible for the reported appearance of a monster." In a 1982 series of reports for New Scientist, Maurice Burton suggested that sightings of Nessie and related creatures may be Scots pine logs rising to the surface of the loch. A rotting log couldn't initially release gases produced by decay because of its high resin level. Gas pressure would ultimately tear a resin seal at one end of the log, launching it through the water, sometimes to the surface. According to Burton, the shape of tree logs with their branch stumps closely resembles the monster descriptions. Due to its long, straight shape, Loch Ness is subject to unique ripples affecting its surface. A seiche is a significant swaying of a lake caused by water returning to its natural level after being driven to one end of the lake. Could the monster be nothing more than an optical illusion? Wind conditions can give a rough, matte look to the water, with calm patches appearing dark from the shore. In 1979, W.H. Lean explained that atmospheric refraction could warp the shape and size of objects and animals, and later issued a photograph of a mirage of rock on Lake Winnipeg that resembled a head and neck. Italian geologist Luigi Picardi has suggested a geological explanation for ancient legends and myths. Picardi remarked that in the earliest recorded sightings of a creature in the life of St. Columba, the creature's appearance was accompanied by loud roaring. The Loch Ness is along the Great Glen Fault, and this could be a representation of an earthquake. Many records consist only of a significant disturbance on the surface of the water. This could be a discharge of gas through the fault, although it may be misunderstood as something moving below the water's surface. In 1980, Swedish naturalist and author Ben Sjögren wrote that contemporary beliefs in lake monsters such as the Loch Ness Monster are connected with Kelpie myths. According to Sjögren, reports of loch monsters have evolved. Initially describing horse-like creatures, they were intended to keep kids away from the loch. Sjögren wrote that the Kelpie legends have grown into stories reflecting a new awareness of plesiosaurs. The Kelpie as a water horse in Loch Ness was mentioned in an 1879 Scottish newspaper and inspired Tim Dinsdale's Project Waterhorse. A study of pre-1933 Highland folklore references to Kelpies, water horses and water bulls showed that Ness was the loch most commonly cited. And then there are those beautiful and sometimes hilarious hoaxes. Many hoax attempts have been made, and a few of them were successful. In August 1933, Italian journalist Francesco Gasparini represented what he said was the first news report on the Loch Ness Monster. In 1959, he described sighting a strange fish and manufactured eyewitness accounts. I had the inspiration to get hold of the item about the strange fish. The idea of the monster had never dawned on me, but then I noted that the strange fish would not yield a long article, and I decided to promote the imaginary being to the rank of monster without further ado. In the 1930s, big game hunter Marmaduke Wetherell went to Loch Ness to look for the monster. Wetherell alleged to have found footprints, but when casts were sent to scientists for examination, they turned out to be from a prankster who had used a hippopotamus foot-shaped umbrella stand. In 1972, a team of zoologists from Yorkshire's Flamingo Park Zoo searched for the monster and found a large body floating in the water. The 16 to 18-foot corpse, which supposedly weighed as much as 1.5 tons, was reported by the Press Association as having a bear's head and a brown scaly body with claw-like fins. The animal was placed in a van to be sent away for testing. However, police took the cadaver under an Act of Parliament, preventing the removal of unidentified creatures from Loch Ness. It was later revealed that Flamingo Park Education Officer John Shields shaved the whiskers and distorted a bull-elephant seal that died the week before dumping it in Loch Ness to deceive his associates. On July the 2nd, 2003, Gerald McSorley found a fossil, seemingly from the creature, when he tripped and fell into the loch. After examination, it was clear that the fossil was planted there. In 2004, a 5-TV documentary team, using cinematic special effects authorities, tried to convince people that there was something in the loch. They built an animatronic model of a plesiosaur, calling it Lucy. Despite difficulties, including Lucy sinking to the bottom of the loch, about 600 sightings were reported where she was placed. In 2005, 2 students claimed to have found a massive tooth embedded in a deer's body on the loch shore. They publicised the discovery, setting up a website. However, the expert investigations soon showed that the tooth was the antler of a munkjack. The tooth was a publicity stunt to support a horror novel by Meg author Steve Alton called The Loch. No one will ever know for sure whether or not the Loch Ness Monster is more myth than it is monster. One thing is for sure, it's a blast to speculate and compelling to study.